So, Brian, transitioning to corner, where do we stand there?
Whew. Well, Cam Hart's out this spring with a shoulder injury.
Okay.
So again, it was something he could have played through. It was either, hey, you rehab it and you play through it, or you just get it cleaned up right after the year. He chose to get it cleaned up right after the year. Same with Chase Adamiola. So he's going to be out, which is, again, not great for him. You'd like to see him get that work in, but Cam Hart was pretty good this year, and so it's about finding that next guy with him, and that's going to be the big question mark. And as we saw against Oklahoma State, I mean, Oklahoma State just said, see that number 5, we're not going to worry about him. We're not going to throw at him. We're not going to waste our time because that guy over there can't cover us. And that's what they did. And we saw that happen with Cincinnati. Wisconsin would have hit a couple big plays against Notre Dame, against Clarence Lewis, if their quarterback could complete a pass beyond 5 yards. Graham Mertz got better as the year went on, but against Notre Dame, he couldn't complete a pass beyond 5 yards. I mean, it was bad. And he was missing open guys. And Cincinnati didn't miss those throws. Oklahoma State didn't miss those throws, and that's what got Notre Dame in some trouble. And Sam Howell didn't miss those throws, which is why that was a competitive game for 4 quarters. So, you look at it and say those are good offenses, but none of them are going to be like what they're going to face in the opener against Ohio State. I mean, with all due respect to Spencer Sanders and Sam Howell and the receiving corps that they put on the field, Notre Dame's going to not – this is going to be the best offense they're going to face and will have faced for several years, really. And I know they lost a lot of receivers, but, I mean – it's ridiculous about what the plug and play that Ohio State kind of has a receiver, where they're able to lose Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and you've got Emeka, Marvin Harrison, you've got obviously Jackson Smith and Jigba's coming back. I mean, and then they just signed another great receiver class with Caleb Brown and that group of players, and so Keon Graves, and so they're a machine there right now, and you're going to have you can't just have a second corner opposite Clarence Lewis or Cam Hart. You've got to have a third corner ready to go where you can play nickel. And so it's the biggest question mark. And right now, as you kind of look at the team and evaluate the team, this to me is my biggest concern, because I don't know if we have the answers there as we as in like observers of Notre Dame, if we have the answers there that you see at other positions. We're like, okay, we don't know if Maris is going to be that guy, but we know that Maris has the tools to be that guy. Riley Mills can be that guy on the offensive line. We know that Lorenzo Styles and Braden Lindsey can be that guy receiver. You know who those guys are. I don't know who those guys are going to be at cornerback. It's a big question mark. And, does Clarence Lewis get a lot better? I don't know. Does Tariq Bracy be a more consistent player? I don't know. Can the sophomores, Ryan Barnes and Philip Riley, Chance Tucker, kind of take a big leap and be able to help you and push for playing time? I don't know. Will the incoming freshmen be able to help you? Jaden Mickey and Benjamin Morrison. I don't know. I don't know if any of those guys are going to be ready. And that's what makes the cornerback position really concerning and really troubling, because as we saw last year, teams can just say, why would you waste your time throwing at Cam Hart? Don't even waste your time on it. Just go throw at those other guys. And until those guys can make teams pay for it, that's just what we're going to see teams do. And look, because Mark, I mean, can we be honest about this, right? Like, Notre Dame's at the point now as a program where you're not worried about beating Navy anymore. You're not worried about being worse than 9-3. Like, you're at that point now where you're going to be a 9-3 team minimum, right? You're going to beat 9 teams on your schedule, right? Just because you're just going to out-talent them. That's where they are now. But that's not the standard for Notre Dame. You shouldn't be. And this is what was so frustrating about Brian Kelly is his overall record is this. What has he ever done against anybody good? He had a below 500 record against teams ranked in the top 15 for his career, right? Like, you're evaluating Notre Dame on the standard of, can you beat the best teams in the country? And Notre Dame has not proven they can consistently do that. And the only big wins they had, right, if you look at the 2 biggest wins they've had since 2013, they beat Michigan State, who ended up being number 3 in the country and ended up going 13-1. That was a really good Michigan State team. When they beat them, they were unranked. So there wasn't the same pressure on that game. And then they went and beat Clemson a couple years ago. Well, I mean, if we're being honest, as Notre Dame fans, you went to overtime against a team that didn't have Trevor Lawrence, didn't have their best defensive lineman, didn't have 2 of their starting linebackers, and you still needed overtime to beat them. And then when that team was healthy and they played you like 3 weeks later, they curb stomped you, right? So you have to be honest about that and say, those are the games that still have to be determined. So Clarence Lewis can beat 9 of the teams that they're going to play this year. Clarence Lewis and Tariq Bracy and those guys, they're going to be good enough to beat 9 of the opponents. They're going to be good enough to beat BYU. They're going to be good enough to beat North Carolina and Boston College. But that's not the standard. The standard is, are they going to be good enough to help you beat Ohio State and Clemson? And if USC is what the media says USC is going to be this year, I mean, apparently they just had the best practice in the history of football the other day, apparently. Then that's the standard, right? And if you beat the other 9 teams and you go 1-2 against those 3 teams, then then it's not good enough. And that's the position group, to me, that is the biggest concern about whether or not you're going to be able to go 3-0 or 2-1 against those teams and then continue to beat the other people you're supposed to beat.
USC better not roll out the same defense they did in 21, one of the worst 3 in the Pac-12.
And last I checked, they didn't have 5 new transfers along the offensive line either. So,
people forget about the offensive line.
Yeah, I don't think they're playing 7-on-7, right?
Field.
I mean, last I checked, it's not a 7-on-7 league, the Pac-12. No. It may look like it sometimes, but it's not a 7-on-7 league, last I checked.
I've heard several player personnel directors in the NFL, when asked to project what's going to happen in the coming NFL season, and this is in a year, after they look at starting quarterback returning, offensive line,